Hi everyone! Welcome to Artemis Mission Control, and no, unfortunately it's not NASA. So, welcome back to yet another video. Thank you guys so much for watching the other ones. I'm probably going to start off every video by saying thank you for watching the other one, and if you're new, thank you for watching this one, or at least clicking on it. I hope you stay for the rest of it. But yeah, no, I am so shocked that people started watching the other ones when I first started, or at least whatever. I was surprised to even get like 100 views. So we're at 300. Big numbers. Totally. But anyways, so you might be wondering, Artemis, what's today's video? What money did you spend this time around? That's not happening today, because I've really dialed down the amount of sort of pre-orders that I buy over the past 2 years for a multitude of reasons. Mainly because, as you can tell, I'm kind of running out of space, and I'm a lot pickier than I was at the beginning of my collection. But speaking of collecting, and speaking of journeys, I would like to bring you guys along, tag you guys along to a journey, and a painful one, of me trying to find my grail, Caroline Yuri. So, actually, I have her right here, and I'm going to be very careful, but this is her. And I'm holding her in a very dangerous position. But this is my grail, and I actually got her recently, sometime this year, and, you know, I'll give close-ups a little bit later. Oh, let me not drop that. Okay. But, yeah, I spent a very, very long time trying to get her. I think mid-2021. So it's 2024 now. You can imagine how much pain I've been through. Now, I would just like to bring you guys along and sort of talk about the process, talk about the highs and lows, mostly lows, because knowing me, everything has to be difficult, and talk about how I got her. So, the original Caroline Yuri, like the original version, not the recolor, this is the recolor, came out in mid-2021, and unfortunately for my sorry ass, I just had to become obsessed with her at a time after she already released. So when she first was announced and everything, there were a few pre-orders. She was a pretty popular figure, but no one could have anticipated how bad her aftermarket would be afterward. And you know, of course, knowing my luck, I just had to become interested in her at the beginning of her gaining traction and popularity. So I don't remember. I started collecting in late 2021, so July 2021. She came out in mid-2021. So if I just started collecting a little bit earlier, I probably would have been able to get her for retail, which was about $250 USD, which is insane to think about. So, yeah, no, around that time, she was only about 350, sort of when she started getting higher in price. And since I had just started collecting not even a few months prior, I was still in the sort of naive stage where I thought that I could, not spend so much money on figure collecting, or I could get a deal for her and wait for her to become a lower price. That was a big mistake. That was a huge mistake. That was probably the worst decision I could have made, because I saw multiple listings for her for about $350. And I never bit the bullet. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna wait for her to go back to retail. Wrong, that didn't end up happening. It's almost as if a little soul-sucking genie was listening into the words that I was speaking out in my brain and out loud, saying that I declined buying this, that decided to, kind of take that decision and make things a million times worse. So, as soon as I made that decision, it almost felt like overnight, her aftermarket went from being roughly 350, sort of being on the higher end, to almost 500 to 600 easily as a steal, and close to 800 to 1,000 on average. 1,000 was definitely the highest that I've seen her. I think I've seen people trying to sell her for like 2K, but that never really sold. And quite frankly, I was so desperate to buy her. She was the only figure that I could think of. I was buying figures at the time, but the only figure that I genuinely really wanted more than anything, other than my Night Hag Lilith, I guess, it was Caroline Yuri. I spent hours looking at my figure collection accounts and their pictures of her, and I just couldn't get her out of my head. Sometimes when you have a figure and you're like, I could live without it. That was not the case for me. I was obsessed with her. You could ask anybody that I was close to during this time, and they would all tell you the same thing. Sort of that I resembled somebody that was looking for the next hit of crack that I could find, because the amount of times, no matter where I was, no matter what location, that I was scrolling through the Ami pre-owned section hoping to find her for anything near $800 was insane. I can't even remember the last logical thought I had during that time. It was all just a blur. It was all just, I need to get Caroline Yuri. The universe eventually decided that on top of making her price skyrocket from $800 to $1,000, that was too easy. That was too simple. Spending that amount of money was not enough. It just had to include bots being, obsessed with her as well. So I am personally fully convinced that these bots that grabbed like every pre-owned version of her walked so that ChatGPT today could run. And I never got her. I never got her on Ami pre-owned, but maybe it was a sign from the universe, and I finally gave up. I finally was like, I can't do this anymore. So you might be thinking, hey Artemis, this seems like a pretty bleak situation. How did you end up getting her? Well, for a long time I actually gave up. And everybody in the figure Discord server that I was part of sort of knew my desperation to try and get her. Every time there was a listing, they would tag me. There was a sorted array of MFC comments throughout the years. Sort of me begging for anybody to give me their Caroline Yuri. And one day, a friend of mine on this figure server texted me and they said, hey, might not be the official one, but there is one defect from somebody in China, and they're selling it without the box. Now, I would like to emphasize, there's a difference between defects and bootlegs. I kind of did a clickbaity thing where I called it a bootleg in the title, and most other people would consider it a bootleg, but I don't. A defect is something that is officially made by, let's say, Native, the same people who made Caroline Yuri, and it is a figure that sort of that is made by them and is made with their molds, but doesn't get through the entire quality control section. It doesn't pass quality control. So they're either discarded or they are thrown out. And either the ones that are thrown, I said discarded or thrown out. That's the same thing. What I mean is that they're either discarded or they're sold, sort of underhanded. And there's a lot of people in China that get these defects and they either fix them up or, they just sell them as is. So when I saw the listing, I'm like, oh my god, this is the only chance I'm going to be able to get her for anything close to retail. The person was asking for $250, and it took about $100 in shipping to get to me. I don't know why. Maybe it was a big box, but whatever. And, I was elated. I was looking at the pictures. It looked exactly like the real thing. It was everything that I could have imagined. And even if there were a few flaws here or there, I was willing to do it rather than coughing up 800 at that point, or even 900 at the time. Yeah, so, again, about defects. Basically, it's not a bootleg, it's just a kind of uglier stepsister of the original version that officially got released, that didn't want to show its face to the world. So when I initially received her, she looked like this. And, it's very different to the official Caroline Yuri. But since she had been on a box fighting, every fish in the sea and traveling the ocean like a pirate, her hair got a little bit compressed, a little bit deflated, if you will. And I should have known better, considering that her hair looked more like Caroline Yuri and not Caroline Yuri, but I was so excited to show the world that I finally posted it on Reddit, but I immediately got flagged for posting about a bootleg. Now, am I a little bit salty about the situation? Yes, but I do understand how people could say, oh, you got scammed. And I appreciate the people under the comments trying to tell me, hey, you might have paid full price for something that wasn't real. Now, I was so frustrated by this situation that I decided to take things into my own hands and restore her to her previous glory, as in the original pictures that were given to me, because they looked awesome. So, at the end of countless hairdryer sessions, hours trying to fix her hair into shape, I ended up getting her pretty close to the original, aka the official version, and how she looked like before she was sent out, and she ended up looking like this. And I was super proud of it. I was like, I'm satisfied. This is like the closest I can get. I don't think that there's any other way that I'll be able to get her. And from afar, she looked exactly like the real thing. So, actually, I have my Caroline Yuri right here, unboxed, which you guys will see close-ups of and comparisons, but I have my little bootleg Caroline Yuri over here, and I still have her. I didn't throw her out, or not bootleg, sorry, I literally just called it not a bootleg earlier ago. It's not a bootleg, it's a defect. So I have my defect Caroline Yuri right over here, and as you can tell, they're a little bit similar. Her hair is very expanded, sort of over time. It kind of deflated again because I put her back in the original Caroline Yuri's box, but I'm pretty proud of what I was able to accomplish. So, we'll have more close-ups and everything for you, for your eyes to feast on. But from afar, looked exactly like the same thing. But there was something I could not get out of my head, and it's like whenever I was sitting on my desk, because I put her on my desk, I just couldn't get over how her mouth looked. Now again, when you're buying a defect, you sort of know what you're getting yourself into. I knew it, but I just could not get over the lack of shading in the mouth. Everything else looked fine, everything else looked pristine, but I just wanted the original one. But I kind of gave up because I couldn't imagine spending even more money on the original after I just spent like $350 trying to get this one. So, let's talk about the re-release. So, instead of saying that God gave light to us on the 7th day, or whatever that story is, they should say that Native, gave light to us when they announced the recolor of Caroline Yuri. I cannot describe enough how all of my prayers to whatever higher being were answered when they announced this recolor. And I was so excited about the fact to finally get her. As we have learned in this story, and as we have learned in previous experiences and previous videos, if you want to go check them out, this outcome would have been too easy. It would have been a lackluster ending to the story. Artemis just gets the figure that she's always been wanting, right? Wrong. So I proceeded to spend the entire pre-order window telling myself every single day that I was going to go home and I was going to go pre-order her, and that would have been that easy. And instead, I did that for 30 days. I spent 30 days of her pre-order window looking at it and being like, I'm going to pre-order this tonight. And I missed her pre-order window by half an hour after midnight when her pre-orders closed. As you might notice, I was heartbroken. As you might have noticed, I'm a little bit of a dumbass, and I quite frankly don't have any brain cells up here. So, having missed my actual Grails, recolor, pre-order, whatever you want to call it, I scoured literally any forum on any page to see if anybody was selling their pre-order for some reason. People are pre-ordering and then immediately selling it. I don't know why I thought that would work, but I was scouring everything. You know what? You could even say that I went to Club Penguin and went into their forums and tried finding anybody that would be selling her. And I eventually ended up finding somebody who was happily trying to give up their pre-order because they weren't interested enough in her anymore. And, we agreed. We spoke over the months, and then they said that they would contact me closer to release so that I could pay up. It was also somebody that I had spoken to before on the same figure server for a long time, so I trusted them naturally. And that, my friends, is where we go wrong, and why you should sort of have everything with a pinch of salt when you're buying from people online, especially even if you already know them. So, we'll get to that now. To preface, I have almost never had any issues with buying anything pre-owned, or even from other users on MFC. Actually, the majority, or not even the majority of my collection, but a solid part of my collection is actually from pre-owned sections and from other users. So I wouldn't say that I was naive in this situation. I was more so trusting, and I think that that's somewhere where people have to have a hard boundary, and I'll tell you why. Somehow, I still managed to get scammed. So that's the moral of the story. No matter how well prepared you think you are for a situation, you can still get scammed. Let's talk about it. So, speaking of the scam, I won't go into great detail. Actually, that's what this whole video is about. And if you want to listen to it, you can. But I had spent a long time talking to this person on the forums, and we had communicated during that time, and I was actively announcing how excited I was to get this figure. Now they sent me the invoice, or they changed the address, they sent me a screenshot, and when it was time to pay up, they they said, hey, I would prefer if you sent through PayPal Family and Friends or through Zelle. And I had no problem with this. I was like, okay, I know you. I know who you are. I'll pay through Zelle. Just because they didn't really want to pay the goods and services fees I didn't want to pay any more than I already had to, so I sent over $250. Now, I will put a link to the screenshots down below, but you can go through all of that if you like. I even made an MFC article about it, which eventually got taken down. But it's just a whole series of me, contacting them saying, hey, it's been about a week or 2 weeks. Have you shipped out the figure yet? They're like, oh no, I'm going to ship it out tomorrow because I was busy yesterday. And I'm like, okay, it's understandable. We can talk about it. And this went on. It's like every time I messaged them, it would be a day or 2 or 3 or 4 of them not contacting me back. And I was sort of getting worried that my payment was going nowhere. But also, I'm just recalling, they didn't update the address to me. It was like past that window, but it was to there. So that's why they had to send it to me. They ended up ignoring my messages consistently. And I was sort of getting worried that I was getting scammed. And I never want to assume that about somebody, especially somebody that I've spoken to before. But they sent me a tracking number. They said, hey, I've shipped it out. Enjoy the figure. And I'm like, great. I got a few pictures of the box and I was like, okay, great. She's sending me the figure. 1 week goes by. The figure has not been scanned in. The figure has not gone anywhere. It says waiting for USPS pickup or arrival, item waiting to get to USPS. And I was getting worried because I have bought a lot of things in my life and it has never taken a week to arrive at USPS, especially if you're going there physically and giving them the item. They immediately scan it. So I tell them, I'm like, hey, there's an issue, or there seems to be an issue with the package. Can you please contact your USPS so we can get this settled? Now, another thing that was a warning sign is that they, again, proceeded to ignore me after multiple images, which I will put up as I continue talking about it. And I was really getting worried that the package was either lost, and again, I'm not assuming that they scammed me just yet. I'm assuming that the package got lost somehow. They eventually get back to me. They say, hey, I put it in the drop-off box. I can't do anything for you. I'm like, whoa, what do you mean you can't do anything for me? You can go back to the drop-off box, or you can go back and you can go ask your USPS location. I ended up having to call, look at the zip code in which the shipping label was supposedly made, go search up what USPS locations were in the area, and make a claim on my own. I updated them about the claim, and I told them, hey, I just submitted a claim for the amount because it's not there. Supposedly, the package had no tracking. The package wasn't even given to USPS. So USPS could not do anything for me, and the claim ended up being nullified. So, again, no tracking for the package, no insurance for the package, no nothing. And keep in mind, every response was delayed by a week or 5 days or anything like that. So I'm freaking out because, again, this is my grail. I've spent so much money trying to get her. And at this point, I'm just fed up. So I call them and I say, hey, I don't really appreciate how you're, ignoring me or whatever. And you can tell by the responses that they did not want to refund me for my money. That's why I eventually posted on MFC and got various responses, and then they eventually decided to message me on MFC, claiming that they had nothing to do with it and that I didn't scam them, and they were insistent upon that. I told them that they had to refund me my money because I never got a figure. And eventually, I only got $125 back from them. Can I say that this was a win-win situation? Absolutely not. I still lost $125 for something that I didn't even get. I wish no hate to this person. Am I a bit frustrated? Yes. But I would like this to be a huge disclaimer to not buy anything just because you know somebody, or never trust people with friends and family unless you actually know them physically and could maybe knock on their door or do something worse in real life if they don't give you your item. Now, would I have done that? No, for legal purposes, but it was a very frustrating situation, and thank God I was able to find a lovely MFC user, put them up here, that sold me their Caroline Yuri for I think $320, which is, pretty close to retail. I was worried that she would skyrocket as well. And they sold me for $320 shipped. And I was finally able to get her. So, as you can tell, huge story. Lots of bits and pieces. I spent years trying to get her. and now I can finally show her to you guys. I got her a long time ago. She's been in my collection for a long time, and truly, if my house were burning down and I had to give up literally everything, luckily I don't have any pets, but I would maybe just grab this figure and run. You know, actually, let me not do that. So, yeah, she's probably one of the few figures that I would give up my soul for, and my kidney, which I offered in the MFC comments as well, and nobody took that offer. But let's go look at some close-ups, let's go look at some comparisons. I'm excited to show you guys the similarities and the differences, and whether or not you decide, hey, I'm gonna go pick up a defect for this figure that I kind of like. There are options. I'm not telling you what to do. You know, if you think they're a bootleg, we're all entitled to our own opinions, just like the people on Reddit think that they're a bootleg. But everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'm just offering a different avenue. Let's go check out the differences. Alright, welcome to super cool unboxing number 3. I don't know why I'm numbering this, as if this is like a PowerPoint presentation, but let's open Caroline Yuri. So as the title suggests, I'm technically using her official box, which looks gorgeous by the way, and you might notice that she's already displayed, like she's to the left of the camera. Well, that's because I put her defect into her original box just to have somewhere to store it. And why don't we unbox it together like it's the original one? Hi, you guys can say hi to yourselves. And then there's an awkward angle of me, and that's her base. I don't use the mirror bases. I think they're a little bit tacky, but if you want to go look at her cooch, that's completely up to you. I display her cast on. But yeah, let's take out the blister. It's huge. You know, no matter whether it's the defect or the original Caroline Yuri, that box is heavy as hell. That's her, you know, instruction sheet. Nothing really fancy on the back. But I'm going to flip it back over and pretend like we're going to look at that and pretend like we're actually following those instructions. So, yeah, just to address something from before, I mentioned that I was going to put like screenshots of the interaction between the scam thing. I don't see any point to do that, really. I think it's just bringing up bad juju into this video, but just take my word for it. Don't, you know, do the whole friends and family thing. Don't trust anybody through Zelle. Doesn't matter if you've known them for a long time. Just a disclaimer. I kind of made that decision right now, because I can. So, anyways, let's take out the lovely little bubble wrap, uncovering her, and let's see what she's all about. Let's see how she's held up since being sent back into jail, if you will. And there she is. She, again, like I said before, is quite impressive, considering that she is a defect or not necessarily the one that passed quality control. I was so happy with her when I first got her, even when her hair was completely deflated. As you can tell, I did a fantastic job getting her hair right into the correct shape, if you will. And yeah, I mean, this angle's a little bit awkward, so let's do a little bit of a higher one. So that's kind of what you would expect. She looks a lot more normal now that I've elevated her a little bit with my $6 tripod. And yeah, okay, this is really funny. Her head is very wobbly because I think I accidentally, you know, shook it out of place. And here's what the original one looks like in my setup, you know. She looks stunning and so gorgeous. When people were complaining about her being tan, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't think I needed a tan Caroline Yuri, but I needed a tan Caroline Yuri, and I think all of us needed one. And yeah, there's a little Be Mine plushie that I kind of stole from a different plushie, and I just cut it out. But let's not talk about that. No plushie abuse in this household. So yeah, just to give you a reference as to what we're looking at. This is a comparison. I'm gonna have 2 different shots of each one, so you guys can have a fair comparison. As you can see, as I've mentioned many times before, they look surprisingly similar. Again, if this were the state of the aftermarket as it were before, and you were looking to not pay $800 to $1,000, it really was a good option back then, and I stand by that point. A lot of people would argue, you know, in the Reddit comments or whatever, MFC comments, that it's a bootleg and you're not allowed to do that and whatever, but ultimately it's your money, you're allowed to do whatever you want. So I placed the original, or the official recolor, in front, just to show you what the lighting would look like in the same position, sort of, even though I have different lights going on in the background, let's ignore that. And yeah, like I said, from afar, they look very, very similar. Here's a close-up of the recolor. So the biggest difference that I would like to point out is that the suits are entirely different levels of quality and or polishing. You know, the defect or bootleg, whatever you want to call it, is sort of messed up or sort of not as shiny as the original. And if you couldn't already notice, you're like, hey, her little bow's gone. But I just knocked that off. This is a little close-up of the back of their hair, and with all my hair dryer tactics, I managed to get it looking pretty similar. The defect is kind of deflated, you could argue, but again, very similar. And yeah, here's a final shot. Hey, wait, thanks for watching another video. Thanks for watching this much longer video if you got to this point. I really appreciate it. I hope you will continue watching more. I don't know how to end a video, so like always, let's look at some bloopers. Thank you. Bye. Now, when I received her... okay, let me pause. Not read it. That was a mistake. Because...